Well, it would appear that RJ, the Jank Monarch, and MBT have utterly failed in their stated goals of fixing climate change with Yu-Gi-Oh! So it seems that now there is only one thing left to do. That's right, folks, the female reboot of Junior Journey. Okay, so here's the history. I've been pretty invested in the YouTube Yu-Gi-Oh! Series Junior Journey pretty much since day one. I think that Yu-Gi-Oh! Is a neat card game, but it's also wildly convoluted and hostile to beginners, so I've always been interested in a rule set that tried to rein in the convoluted parts. In fact, I was so invested in the series that pretty early on, I did join MBT's Discord to chat with more people about the format, and from there helped spearhead the creation of a dedicated junior format Discord server. Eventually, I thought to myself, hey, I like this format enough that if the opportunity arose, I would love to do my own spin on it. So I decided to shoot my shot. In May of 2023, I messaged MBT on the Discord. Hey, I hope this isn't weird to ask. 1. Are you gonna do Junior Journey Season 2? 2. If no, can I take a crack at it? His response was 1. No. 2. Yes. Now, that's all well and good. But if I'm being honest, when I sent this message, I did kind of think that Junior Journey Season 1 would probably be wrapping up sometime in the coming months, if not by the end of that year. That's not exactly what happened. In reality, doing a YouTube series is hard, logistics are hard, and indeed, Joseph did give himself a pretty difficult logistical goal in deciding from day one that every second episode would have 2 completely new guest stars. It's hard to get a bunch of people together for something like this, and therefore, it is December of 2024, and we're still not quite finished with Junior Journey Season 1. So, on November 6th, I messaged Joseph and asked him, I think I'd like to take a swing at Junior Journey Season 2 in 2025, even if y'all haven't done the final episodes by then. Would you be offended if I did that? And he responded, no, not at all. So yeah, this is real. We're planning for this, and we're making this happen. So, I've been calling this series, this collection of videos I intend to record, Junior Journey Season 2, with the same energy that someone in the games industry would have called in development Baldur's Gate 3 Untitled Strategy Game. It won't be called Junior Journey Season 2 when it actually starts, though. In terms of working within the YouTube algorithm, and stick with me here, I think I'm going with the marketing strategy they did with Batman Begins and The Dark Knight. Because way back in 2008, when The Dark Knight came out, and this is true, I was there, you had a ton of people who actually weren't aware the movie was a sequel and watched the movie under those pretenses. Whether intentional or not, this turned out to be a good marketing strategy. Because when those box office numbers came out, they had gotten all the people who liked Batman Begins, and they had also gotten a lot of people who maybe wouldn't have wanted to watch a sequel because they didn't feel like they were caught up on the lore or what have you. Of course, this also works in part because mostly The Dark Knight works even if you haven't seen the first one, and that's also the vibe I'm going for here. Just gonna make the Dark Knight of YouTube series, I guess. One of my big mission statements with this season is that I would like to make this as accessible as possible for people who are not knee-deep in Yu-Gi-Oh! Meme culture and lore. Yu-Gi-Oh! Can be perceived as, and in some cases has been, a somewhat insular community with our overcomplicated rule set and our absurd inside baseball terminology. Like Yu-Gi-Oh! Players, if you've ever actually tried to explain Pac-Man as an acronym to the uninitiated, you know we don't always use definitions that actually define what a card does. With that in mind, I want to aim to make a season that is fun both for hardcore Yu-Gi-Oh! Enthusiasts who know what missing the timing means and giggle at the mention of Kaluth the Moonshadow, as well as people who are less involved, who might be generally interested in Yu-Gi-Oh! But feel overwhelmed at the sheer number of things happening. I plan on doing the series because I enjoy Yu-Gi-Oh! And I think this format is fun, but I also acknowledge that as a card game, it is frequently complicated as all hell and has a massive barrier to entry to anyone not already invested in it. So with that in mind, this video here is going to exist as the longer, more detail-oriented pre-series video where I talk about the mechanics we're changing and why I made those changes. We're still gonna go over those changes when the series starts proper, but for right now, we're gonna give ourselves as much time as possible to really get into the nitty-gritty here. We'll keep it breezier with the actual video in an attempt to not utterly overwhelm newcomers, but for right now, let's get detail-oriented. First of all, we simply must talk about the rules of engagement. One thing I'm attempting to do right out of the gate is stick to one rule set the entire series. I don't know if that's possible, and I'll change things if I feel there is a better way to balance the format. I am not inflexible, but we are going to go forth with that intention. In Season 1, MBT and RJ took us through all the different iterations of Master Rule, good for its adherence to the card game we know, but it's worth noting that every single Master Rule, until the 5th one, is bad. I also worry that, again, people not in the know about the card game might have trouble keeping up if we're swapping to a completely new board setup, if we have to do things like figure out priority. So if the goal is simplicity, let's just skip all of that. In JJ Season 2, I say we start with Master Rule 5 and just stick with that the entire time. And yeah, that does mean you get to use extra deck monster spaces in 2002. Who cares? Summon 6 monsters. You won't. Master Rule 5 will be the template from the jump, but of course there are a number of rules that give Junior format its vibe and are indeed going to be carried over from Season 1 into Season 2. Those rules are as follows. You may only activate 1 spell card per turn. You may only activate 1 trap card per turn. You may only set 1 spell or trap card per turn. Tribute summoning is not a mechanic. You just normal summon higher level guys. The big function of these rules, and the reason I like the action economy of Junior format, is that they make monsters much more powerful and they rein in spell and trap cards a fair amount. This is a problem I have with the Yu-Gi-Oh! Trading card game in its early years that Junior format pretty neatly solves. The fact that after a while you do run into the problem of only having 1 normal summon per turn versus an infinite number of spell activations and an infinite number of opportunities to set spell and trap cards in a turn. This gives even famous DM era formats like GOAT a start and stop gameplay quality I don't find compelling, as all else devolves into a race to see who can best get 1-up on copies of Smashing Ground first. This is personal preference, obviously. I'm not ragging on people who like GOAT. It's okay to be wrong. But I think this extremely different way of using your resources that the rule set offers is essential to what makes Junior format compelling. Suddenly, 5 copies of Smashing Ground is not the best hand in the game, and you have to think differently about the pool of cards at your disposal. All this talk of action economy will lead nicely into my first rule change of Season 2, which is we are doing a special summon limit. So all those nice things I said a minute ago about Junior format's rule set fixing the TCG's action economy problem, that only really applies until the card pool hits maybe like 2012 or 2013 releases. At around that point, to be honest, Yu-Gi-Oh! Kind of fixes a lot of their core problems in card game design and came to the only conclusion they ever could about balance. If spell and trap cards have no limits, then the monsters ought to be the same. Around the time when we moved into Dragon Rulers and Duelist Alliance, Konami began printing truly extraordinarily powerful monsters that facilitated combos powerful enough that monsters were finally on the same level as the for years mechanically broken spell cards, and from there the balance of power steadily but surely moved fully in favor of monster cards. Now, like I said, this was actually a good choice from the TCG perspective. It finally, over a decade into Yu-Gi-Oh's history, allowed monsters the opportunity to properly shine in their own card game. But it certainly didn't make things better from a complication and barrier of entry standpoint, and it also makes the second half of Junior Journey seem a tiny bit awkward. Suddenly, a rule set that made the card game more balanced in its first round of iterations was now massively nerfing spell and trap cards in a format where they were already moving more and more out of favor. Monsters in latter-day Yu-Gi-Oh! Are so powerful that if left uninhibited, you do ultimately find that Junior format in like 2020 is really similar to just Yu-Gi-Oh! TCG in 2020. So, if we are aiming to make this a simplified format, we gotta implement some kind of special summon limit to match the nerfs placed on spell and trap cards. What I've landed on is each player gets up to 3 instances of special summoning non-normal monsters per turn. And don't worry, we're gonna go over this a little bit to make sure we're all on the same page. Okay, so normal monsters are quite simply the yellow Yu-Gi-Oh cards that have no effect. The text on these cards is actually italicized because it gets to be about lore rather than the effect the card has on the gameplay. So theoretically, if you get a loop into play that lets you infinitely summon normal monsters without using up any of your other resources, then you can just summon as many normal monsters as your heart desires. Every other type of monster, though, does eat up one of your 3 specials per turn. I also want to make sure we're on the same page about what it means when I say instances of special summon. So imagine I'm activating the trap card Hysteric Party, which lets me summon as many copies of Harpy Lady from the graveyard as I want. I have a couple copies of Harpy Lady, the normal monster, in my graveyard, and a couple copies of Harpy Queen, which is an effect monster whose effect allows it to be treated as Harpy Lady while in the graveyard, making it a correct target for Hysteric Party. How the resolution of this card affects my 3 special summon limit depends entirely on what monsters I choose to summon off of this trap activation. Suppose I choose to just summon the normal monsters from my graveyard, the yellow Harpy Ladies. If I do that, then my special summons for the turn are untouched. I still have 3 available, so I can use just these normal monsters to facilitate some Link summons, some Xyz summons, just a board of monsters to keep going in. If, on the other hand, I choose to summon 2 Harpy Lady and 1 Harpy Queen, that will eat into one of my 3 special summons per turn, and I have to balance my remaining resources accordingly. However, if I choose to summon 2 or more Harpy Queen off of the 1 Hysteric Party, that still only counts for one of your 3 special summons per turn, because the activation of Hysteric Party is only 1 instance of special summoning. So cards that let you summon multiple times in 1 instance only work towards 1 of your 3 special summons per turn. This will also allow the mechanic of pendulum summoning to not be completely useless. Now, we are borrowing the 3 special summon thing from Trinity format. I don't know if y'all want to sue us over there, go ahead, I guess. I have nothing and you will get nothing from me and I'll cry, but I can't stop you. Either way, I think I've done my part to justify why I think we should do a special summon limit if we're going to try Junior format again. So now let's move on to some other rules I'd like to implement. Firstly, this might ultimately affect flavor more than how the game plays, but you can now normal summon monsters in face-up defense mode. This was a thing that was always allowed in the anime and never once legal in the trading card game, so fuck it, we're allowing it here. Since we're playing by Master Rule 5, I'm also going to say that cards with erratas should be played using their most recent card text unless noted otherwise. I actually think it's kind of fun to keep a list of cards that are exempt from the erratas because the Konami practice of errata-ing old cards and changing their text does not always function as they intended. Most frequently, Konami errata stuff because they feel it is too powerful but sometimes they engage in this practice with cards that were totally fine in their original card text and become unplayable with the update. Goyo Guardian is an example of this, a card that was already being power crept out of the meta by the time it was altered to be more difficult to summon. This card does not need an errata, so since it's my format and my rules, this card will probably be treated as its original card text when we get to release year 2008. I'll probably also give similar treatment to Sinister Serpent because it's extremely funny. Oh, here's another rule change. The Discord decided it would be funny if any instance on card text that says tribute summon was instead treated as normal summon. What does this mean? Well, it basically means that the monarchs are playable because you can just normal summon them and get their effect. I'm sure it has way worse implications that I haven't thought about that I'm is going to make me regret saying this, but you know what? Fuck it, we ball. The last change from Season 1 to Season 2 I will note is, in Season 1, Quick Play spells did not have their functionality. Well, I say, Season 2 Quick Play spells are back, baby. They work exactly as you'd expect. They just work the way they do in the Yu-Gi-Oh! TCG, and they slot into Junior format card limitations exactly how you would expect. With all these alterations in how Junior format will play, you might be wondering, well, is there anything else in the series that will look different? And I'm so glad you asked because I have fantastic news about the next segment. Over the course of this video, I have made some number of changes in how this series functions, and I've often paired those with explanations for why I'm making those changes, which may have necessarily involved constructive criticism of Junior Journey Season 1. For that reason, I would like to take this space of time now to say that I think MBT and RJ did an excellent job with this series, warts and all. I'm not entirely sure either of them fully grasped the size of the task they were signing themselves up for at the beginning. Even with a simplified rule set, Yu-Gi-Oh! Is just a massive game with so many different variables, and given the size and scale of that task, the fact that the resulting format was often fun and sometimes truly wonderful is a legitimate achievement. Part of why I have kept up some amount of desire to do this series, even a year and a half after first getting permission, is that I'm really excited to build off the genuinely impressive foundation that RJ and Joseph laid out. That being said, I think there are things about a series a viewer can glean onto that sometimes you cannot see from the inside, and I'm generally confident in the alterations I want to make going into Season 2. So let's talk about series structure. One thing I need to do, simply in order for me to have an ability to spend my limited energy doing this series, is to cut down the number of guests. While the thinking in Season 1 of getting different cooks in the kitchen for different perspectives on the format is sound, it's hard to get that many people together, and it also didn't always lead to interesting discoveries. Sometimes you had people like King Scarlet who never played a game a day in their life, made something truly stupid and insane and wonderful, spent their recorded episode throwing ass and taking names, and then disappeared back to their home planet forever, confident in their societal impact. More often, though, it was a guest who simply didn't have the time to learn a whole new format and ended up net decking a list from the Junior Journey Discord that they might not have had enough experience with to effectively pilot. So this time around, we're cutting out the middleman, and we're just going to make the series a lot more focused on the silly, wonderful people who join the Discord and actively seek out the format with the intention of optimizing it. That's right, folks. The biggest change in episode structure for my spin on Junior format is we're going to put a lot more emphasis on the tournaments we hold in the Discord. Instead of 2 brand new guests for every other episode, I will simply be hosting this series with 1 rotating co-host for each subsequent release year, and we will bookend every era of Junior Format Season 2 with a little Discord tournament. Let's break it down further. Like Season 1, we will be splitting the card pool into year of release, and each year will have 2 dedicated episodes to it. The goal will be to release 2 episodes a month, so each release year has its own month-long format. prior to the first video in a given month, the co-host and I will release a pre-ban list and hold a little tournament in the Discord to see the state of the format. Then for episode 1, myself and the co-host will record a game heavily informed by the results of the first Discord tourney. We'll use all our compiled information and knowledge to make any final tweaks to the format we think are needed, and then we will turn it over entirely to the second Discord tournament. For the second video per year of release, the co-hosts and I will be commentating the top cut of a week-and-a-half long Discord tourney, where all of you will be given the opportunity to humiliate us for our ban list misses. By the way, that's a great time to do this. Junior format Discord, link in the description. Plug. And to be clear, you do need to have the capacity to coexist with other people in order to participate in our tournaments. No transphobia or racism. Don't be an asshole. But if you can clear those admittedly low bars, I do want to throw out the challenge to all viewers, present and future, that if you watch any of the episodes in this series and think there's a crucial part of the format we are missing, join the Discord and kick our asses. I'm so serious. If we miss something, click that join button and come absolutely punish us for our hubris. That's how it happens. If you're wrong, then hey, maybe you can stick around and learn something from us. But if you're right, you might end up being featured on the series, being totally right and bullying all of us with your superior card playing. If you want to just leave rude comments about our take on the format without playing it, it is very, very easy to disregard your perspective entirely. But if you intend to be a troll with principles, then I will be listening. I mentioned earlier that we're gonna go into every new junior format release year with some pre-bans, and I'm pretty happy about that part. One of the nice things about being a sequel series is that I get to shamelessly learn from the mistakes of my ancestors and skip a few steps when it comes to format crafting. In season 1 of junior format, occasionally an episode would be completely ruined by some card interacting with the rule set in a wild way, or just by Konami straight up printing something they never should have. This caused some amount of grief for RJ and Joseph, and I am not above using that grief to spare my own. Sorry to anyone who thought we were gonna leave Snatch Steal legal for episode 1, but no, that is not happening. For the series proper, I will not go into every card we pre-ban and or pre-limit, because I anticipate the bulk of our changes will be when we introduce New Year's into the card pool, and I don't want to overwhelm our viewers with drawn out discussions about cards they will not be seeing in the episode. For this video though, I will go over our first batch of pre-bans and talk about what me and the O2 co-host were thinking when we did this. Alright, this video is going to be so long, so I'm going to try to fire through these. Banned, Barrel Dragon. It's so funny, but it really is just too powerful. It has too many attack points. We'll talk about trying to leave blowback at 1, but this card is not okay. Jinzo. We're banning this because the gameplay it inspires isn't super compelling or interesting. It's a little bit smaller than the typical kind of Junior Journey standard Bungus. At 2400, it's not the scariest monster, but the problem is, if your opponent's normal summon at a turn where you need your trap card is Jinzo, then the game just immediately ends. And that's not super fun. In a format that's kind of limiting interactions, a card that gets rid of 1/3 of all interactions that you can just normal summon becomes a problem. Saga of the Thunder and Suijin, because these cards are good forever and they become pretty boring pretty quickly. Change of Heart, the swing in advantage and swing in kind of attack point amounts this card offers is not fair. Cold Wave, again, further limiting people's interactions in an already limited interaction format, not the best. Confiscation and Forceful Sentry. I actually don't think these cards are good in our format. I actually think, while busted and unfair in TCG, this is actually not the best way that you can use your single spell activation per turn. Usually you want to use that activation on what your opponent has on their field rather than what is in their hand. Getting hand knowledge doesn't always help as much when your opponent just has like two 2900 attack monsters. but they are really unfair in their basic conception and card design, so we're banning them anyway. Messenger of Peace. You'll see us go a little bit hard on kind of stall-based cards, because I think that continuous spell and trap cards come at a premium under Junior format rules. A spell card that, like, stays on the field and continues to do beneficial things on a future turn, where you are now activating a different spell card, you now get to a new spell activation, is very, very powerful. Therefore, stall cards are even more a little bit of a problem than they already were in TCG. So we're not dealing with Messenger of Peace. Raigeki! It's the best card to destroy monsters for years and years and years, and it's boring, and it's Raigeki. Snatch Steel! No. Swords of Revealing Light. Along the same lines as Messenger of Peace, this is just a stall card. Imperial Order. This is, like, worse than Jinzo in terms of eliminating 1/3 of interactions. Even with our errata rule, even with using the most recent card text that they have printed on Imperial Order as of, like, 2020, 2021, this is still just a deeply unfair, unfun Yu-Gi-Oh card. Ultimate Offering is just too good to summon multiple bunguses, especially to summon multiple bunguses during your opponent's turn. And Gravity Bind, just another stall card that we don't want to deal with. Those were the cards that we banned. The limits are as follows: Blue Eyes White Dragon, Cosmo Queen, and Buster Blader. These cards hold sin, and the reason that they are each limited to 1 copy is their attack stat. Blue Eyes White Dragon is the strongest individual normal summon in the format. Cosmo Queen is the second, but in some very important ways is even slightly better than Blue Eyes White Dragon, because it beats over Buster Blader, and there is some amount of anti-dragon, some number of anti-dragon specific cards in the format. Buster Blader we're limiting just because its existence tends to make cards like Blue Eyes White Dragon and Trihorn Dragon difficult to even justify including. It wouldn't be limited if there were, like, any other kind of bunguses in the format to play instead of it, but because Buster Blader at 2600, even without the effect, is already just a staple, it's already like the 4th or 5th strongest monster, being 3100 if your opponent has played any game pushes it over the edge. Kazajin! We decided for comedy purposes, while we are banning the other Gate Guardian pieces, the smallest one, the dinkiest one, can remain limited at 1 copy. Dark Hole. I think it's kind of healthy to have one of these kicking around. I think having this as a threat and as a method to punish people for overextending and summoning too many monsters at once helps keep things in check a little bit. That being said, 3 would absolutely be too many. Delinquent Duo. This card I'm not afraid of for the very silly reason that almost immediately in Junior format we're going to get a little card called Despair from the Dark, which makes it really, really hard to justify playing Delinquent Duo, because now, in addition to the problems we already went over with the other spell cards that are hand rips, that are banned, where in Junior format a lot of the time you want your 1 spell activation per turn to affect what is on your opponent's board rather than what's in their hand. You also have the Phantom, the possibility of absolutely doming yourself with a really, really big free special summon bungus from your opponent. That being said, I am still willing to limit it because it's pretty iconic and not in a good way. Giant Trunade, Heavy Storm, and Mystical Space Typhoon. They're all just really good, really strong spell and trap card removal, so we're just putting all of them at 1. And then Mystical Space Typhoon is notable for being stronger than it was in Junior Format Season 1, because it is functional as a quick play spell card again. Monster Reborn, Premature Burial, and Call the Haunted are all cut from the same cloth in terms of just being spell and trap cards that resurrect monsters from the graveyard. They are all limited to 1 copy. There is a possibility that Monster Reborn will get banned before long. There's already an argument that it should be banned right now. We just kind of ran into the problem with designing this format that not many cards do anything. So even if Monster Reborn and Premature Burial and Call of the Haunted are a little bit too strong, at least they are functional and do something interesting, and at least they also do in terms of broken cards, it's generally better to have stuff that is good for you to play than is bad for your opponent when you play it. It's better to to play a card that gives yourself more options than to play a card that gives your opponent less options, because then theoretically you can still just balance the format around everybody having these options. Speaking of which, here is Pot of Greed. I'm not super impressed with Pot of Greed right now. Similar vibe to the Hand Rippy guys. This is a spell card that gets you more cards in your hand, but doesn't affect your opponent's board at all, and oh shit, suddenly you don't have your spell activation for the turn. That being said, at some point, pretty much no matter what we do, the tempo that Pot of Greed offers is just going to become a thing that every single deck in the world wants. So we'll just leave it at limited for now and see how it goes. Toll is limited. The Discord has already made fun of me for this. The Discord has clowned on me for this, it's got to be said, and they may be correct to do so, but I want it to be known that I erred on the side of caution when it came to continuous spells in early Junior format, and in kind of limited formats, this card has been known to cause grief. Dust Tornado is a lovely Yu-Gi-Oh card. It's gonna be limited alongside all the other very solid spell and trap card removal options. It's nice that it gives you a chance to set an extra card in addition to your one set that you have during your own turn. Helps you cheat out advantage in a way that is really, really neat. Solemn Judgment. This might also be incorrect. This might be another instance of a card that probably shouldn't even be legal, similar to Monster Reborn. But similar to Monster Reborn, it's a card that does something. It's a card that introduces a dynamic. So we are going to try the format out with it legal just for now. And finally, Trap Hole. This is maybe less flashy than any of the other cards that you've seen over the course of the Forbidden Limited list. Trap Hole is Trap Hole. Everybody knows Trap Hole. But the thing you gotta understand is that this card was good until 2011. In the first season of Junior format. This card is so good for so long because the best thing you can do during your opponent's turn is deny them their normal summon. Making your opponent use up their normal and get nothing out of it is just something that is good forever. It can be frustrating, and if left unlimited, we would eventually see decks that are just 3 copies of Trap Hole, 3 copies of Bottomless Trap Hole, which gets old after a while, so I'm gonna force us to play other trap cards. You think I've got it all? Everyone thinks I've got it made well. Okay, here's the deal. I wasn't lying when I said I want to do this series because I enjoy Yu-Gi-Oh! I enjoy getting into the nitty-gritty of game rules and what does and doesn't work, and I do want to give this series a shot. I do also feel like I need to be upfront with all of y'all about where I'm coming from. I've been unemployed for some number of years. This started with the complete and utter collapse of my mental health in the 2020-2021 range, facilitated in part by the stupid, selfish, evil institutions of my dogshit genocidal home nation, the USA. I've talked about this extensively before, and I won't go into all the details, but I did want to acknowledge that while I mentally have been doing better more recently, I still am unemployed. In fact, despite being in a mental place now where I could take up a job if it had some basic level of respect for my limits and needs, the job market in this country is bad in a way that is hard to describe accurately with the English language. The job market is so bad, some days I feel farther from full-time employment than I did in the time where I literally mentally could not handle full-time employment. Now, in this regard, I am somewhat privileged. For other people, complete unemployment would mean houselessness, starvation, and other assorted catastrophes. Whereas for me, it just means I am forced to live as a trans woman in a small town where I don't feel entirely safe, with absolutely no indication of any means of escape anytime soon. Not as bad as it could be, but not ideal. I want to do Junior Format Season 2, and I'm going to do it for as long as I can. At the same time, life goes on. I will continue trying to find a way to move out of this house and return to all my gay friends in the city, and if the choice arises where I could take up a job that allows me to achieve that goal, but that job offers me less time and freedom to do a series like this, then yeah, the status of Junior Journey Season 2 may be in jeopardy. I'd rather just take this series to its conclusion, but I do gotta survive. So let's talk about Patreon. By supporting me on Patreon, you are directly decreasing the likelihood that circumstances of life will force me to stop producing Junior Journey Season 2. The best case scenario, of course, would be to have enough support on Patreon to just make YouTube shenanigans the thing I do full-time for my paycheck, but any amount of support does help. And in order to thank those who do support me, there will be a third and secret episode of Junior Journey for each release year, exclusive to patrons of any tier. Basically, I'll be recording myself participating in one of the tournaments for each month, and if you're a Patreon, you get to watch me try to conquer the Discord using rules I created, and I bet I will not be embarrassed at all. Those videos will be uploaded to Patreon, basically just as unedited VODs. If we hit $250 a month in Patreon donations, I will start to upload those VODs publicly. If we hit $500 a month, I'll actually start editing them and add them to the monthly public release docket. Like I said, my intention and hope is to do this series for as long as possible. I do also need to be realistic with all of you, though. Things are bad in the United States. They're really, really bad, presently and right now, and they're going to get worse, not better. I don't know what the future holds, and I don't know if I'm going to be able to keep at it. So, if you end up enjoying what I'm creating, please consider supporting me on Patreon to increase the likelihood that it keeps going.
Don't say if I were you, or tell me what.
That will just about do it for logistical stuff in Junior Journey Season 2. Our first tournament will be going down January 1st and 2nd, with Top Cut happening after. Our first episode will be released on January 8th, and the second one we will aim for January 22nd, though we'll leave space for the tournament to properly conclude if needed. Like I said, important links in the description. The first link will be to join the Discord. The second and third link will be to participate in the tournament coming up, and feel free to ask us any questions in the Discord about how the format is going to play out. Thank you so much for watching. I look forward to dueling you. Stay safe, be well, and I'll see y'all in 2025.